Without further ado, we move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Pradeep Erinjery, Chairman and CEO of ThirdWare Solutions Limited. Mr. Erinjery founded ThirdWare in 1996 to provide solutions in the area of enterprise solutions. ThirdWare is committed to helping customers leverage technology. Their clients include Ford Motor Company, Pfizer, Rockwell Automation, Unilever, and Coca-Cola, among others. ThirdWare also has the unique distinction of being the only non-automotive company outside the United States where Ford Motor Company has made an equity investment. Mr. Erinjery holds a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering and has more than 20 years of experience in the industry, 18 of which have been spent in the field of enterprise solutions. He is proficient in all aspects of IT solutions and the consulting business and provides strategic leadership as Chairman and CEO of ThirdWare Solutions Limited. We welcome you, sir, to TISS and to the Innovation Forum 2013.
I guess since it's after lunch and you had a lot of interesting speakers, and I was not fortunate to be part of it in the morning session, but over lunch I had a discussion with Professor Vijay Kumar, and he said that everybody's been very excited with and been informed about things that are happening in this country related to innovation, but they were not aware of. So I think the Innovation Forum is doing a brilliant job of making people aware of activities and actions taken by people at different parts of the world. I just met one of the speakers coming from Spain. So when when Professor called me up and said, he'd like us to make some support this Innovation Forum, and the topic suggested was like, when you do startups, what are the challenges they face when you go through, what kind of challenges would a startup face on innovation per se, and probably sustaining innovation going on an ongoing basis. The reason I state these two separately is if you look by default, a startup addresses a pain point in somewhere, you could call it society, industry, in a specific area or a geography. So that's innovative in itself, right? And probably as it grows, the first thing that when you get together, maybe either with a couple of like-minded people, friends, or even supported by industry in some form, is they want you to scale, right? And that kind of creates a completely different challenge in terms of what your business started out with and where it's got to go. So, you had a great idea, you realize that there is a basic gap in people's wants and needs, and you can go ahead and fulfill it. You also have an idea of what to put together, because that's what most entrepreneurs look at and say, do I know what the gap is, and will I be able to put a solution together? And they are by far considered by most people as the real difficult parts, right? And I guess even when you pass out of school or college, most of you would look at it and say, do I want to be the master of my destiny, or do I want to go and work someplace? And you also meet a lot of people who say, I worked it, I'm very happy where I am, but I'm not challenged sufficiently, right? And if you look at this and saying there could be two parts. One, I go and start up an enterprise. I do get to a certain threshold. That's where everybody wants me. Maybe let's say if you take financial investors want you to take it, you scale it to a certain point, and then you reach a challenge. From most founders' perspectives, the biggest challenge is at the point you hit that scale, because a lot of what worked for you in the past probably is not very relevant in the future going forward, right? Because you also have to look at it that probably the sum total of energy in this world is constant. So as an individual, there's so much capacity that you can push yourself to doing, to probably making a change. And that's what I thought this conversation, because I think I will speak a bit and then I want to take some feedback from you. Maybe I'll take some innovative thoughts back from the team and to actually apply it in my own organization. So it's not something from a theoretical or philosophical perspective. but I would share with you certain challenges that we face, and probably we could discuss in what way we could evolve certain solutions around it. So I made 3 points here. One, obviously when you get into a startup and you begin life, most entrepreneurs have a fair idea of what they want to do and why they want to do it, right? And that's why they begin, they put their energies and push it. The goal at most points is to scale it. Obviously, unless it's successful, it won't scale. So you probably push it to a certain level and get it to a certain scale. And at that point, you need to make a step jump in making that transition from a startup to a going concern, and and a concern that will probably live with a defined purpose forever. And at that stage, most people falter. And you'd find a lot of scenarios, a lot of times, especially in the technology world from where I come from, the financial systems are so strong that they can make most entrepreneurs or founders fall for it very quickly, right? Because your company is valued beyond the basic norms that are there in the system. You can also get a lot of venture capitalists and people to put in money, because they know that if it's reached a certain level of success, they could be participants in that scale, and they're ensured a certain level of success because of a promoter's past background. So they put 2 and 2 together and say this could work. The fundamental challenge for the entrepreneur, the founder, or the initial founding group, if you would call it, is that, like I mentioned to you, is to unlearning some of the success that they tasted in the past. They would have created a certain belief around the business model that they've seen being successful for them. But at this point, when they've reached a certain threshold of growth and have scaled the business forward, they need to now take a seat backwards and create what we call, what everybody asks us to do is to make sure that you have an organization in place, you build the systems together to keep it running, define a structure, and then leave the organization with a great culture, right? And I'm sure you've got, all of you have gone through that process. And I mean, if you're in school, you learn about it. If you've been working, you hear it. And it's very, very difficult to do, because this is part of the problem that saying the initial founders and the company are to some extent strongly intertwined, and the ecosystem that makes them successful is also probably the ecosystem that makes it most difficult to transition out of, right? So you've hired all the people who make sense to the company. You've probably put them into positions where they are productive and therefore making the company successful. Bear in mind, I'm talking of this in the case where it's successful. We also know that there are a lot of people who try and then it really doesn't get beyond a certain point. I'm talking about companies that have begun with a founder or a group of founders and then taken it to a certain threshold, and then how do they scale it or become the next Microsoft or the next Google and so on. This is where, when I say take it, making it very successful, it's most often limited to the fact that the founders are not able to let go of their, the ecosystem that they've created, not able to let go of the beliefs that they have. And in that comes, the fundamental part of where we ask, the actual innovation has to begin at the founder level. So it's in some question that we were talking to one of the participants, and she said, we've been having a lot of discussions and topics, but where does this apply to the self? To you as an individual, right? How does innovation apply, and how do people do things different from what they've probably done in the past? They look at their lives and decide that, okay, here's what got me here, right? And here's where I am. Now, what do I want for the next part of my life? Because most times, the initial founders got to start making those calls, because there's no right answer to this, right? There's one part who might say, I'm at an age and a phase where I'd like to continue to run the business, and I learn from my past mistakes and bring together people intelligent enough to work with me and build the business into the next rate of growth, right? And quite a few succeed in doing that. There's the other part who step backwards and then create teams who will spiral the business in new forms and new kinds, in new geographies and new product lines. So there's a path which in part we followed is saying that if you look at the corporate office or the initial office, that's a very difficult place to innovate out of, right? And every time you come up with an idea, there are very bright people who tell you why they tried it in the past, why it didn't work, what are all the constraints to success. And it's actually got very little to do with the idea, in my opinion. It's got to do with, like I say, most of it is what do you believe in, right? And if a group of people believe in something very strongly, they will make it successful. So you really get out of the corporate office or the initial office, and you're better off setting up a satellite office. Like, if you're based in Mumbai, then set up something in Bangalore, or set up something in Chennai. Or if you can, then take it to a new geography, maybe like, the US or Europe or any other place, obviously linked to the business. And there you can give fresh shoots to your business, because now you're actually providing the basic ecosystem that that business needs, but you're also giving them a certain level of freedom and limiting them from being constrained by some of the past successes and past business models that have been applicable to the business that it started out with. And that's just one example where I'm saying we evaluated a lot in our times, and we found that it was difficult for certain managers that we brought in from professional organizations to be successful in our environment, right? And it so happened it was because of the whole ecosystem that we had created, which for that side of the business was necessary, because the systems were probably not that strong, but the work got done, and it happened because everybody was passionate about what they were doing, and many things fell in place because of the basic culture and desire to want to do it, rather than because of the systems and processes that were in play. But when you get to a new place and you build it with professional managers, then you try to bring the necessary structure and systems around it from day one, because they won't be successful without those systems and processes in place. And at that stage, they also look at the business differently. So you are kind of feeding in what works well, but giving them enough freedom to probably innovate and move forward on that. So that's one way to circumvent this founder dilemma that happens out there. The second part of it is like, when you look at the point I mentioned, the owners or the initial group of founders got to make that call, what role do they want to play? Obviously, one part is that if you're in it for the money, you could always cash out and then say, not found too many people who are very happy, where everybody dreams to sit on the beach and stare into the waters, but there's only so much time you can do that. And there's a whole life ahead of you to do many things. The second part of it is to bring some kind of financial investor into the business, right? The reason for that, you could call it a strategic investor, because many times if your business is successful, you don't need the money. That's part of the business structure we went in, that we really didn't need money. So you'd say, why would I go to a venture capitalist or financial investor? Because anyone who puts his money in the business is putting it primarily to grow the business, and primarily to grow is going to have a fiscal dialogue with you, right? I want my money to grow forward. Here's a very attractive opportunity. Let's sell it off. So the very nature of that means any venture capitalist or any kind of that or any different name that they call it, angel to a venture capitalist to private equity, they're all different forms, but they all want their money to grow, and that's good because it brings a certain discipline to the picture. What we did was we found a strategic investor in our customer, right? Because we were growing our business, we had positive cash flows. We happened to share our business plan with our customers, who said, oh, by the way, I'm also looking to, I grow my business in a certain form, and if you are willing to kind of allocate a certain set of resources for us in not building certain capability, we'll be happy to invest or take a strategic investment in you, because they wanted that control, so they could ensure that if required, we will probably not, like, let's say a large enterprise is saying, I'm not going to build capability in a certain area. He's got to go back to his leadership and say, the reason we are not building is because we kind of trust this partner who's going out there. And by the way, we've ensured that we have control over them by virtue of this strategic investment, right? So for us, what it did was that when we were going into a new geography, like in the US, you'd say you need a strong brand to kind of get the business that you need, right? So how do you do that? You kill two birds with one stone. You obviously know that you're capable enough to go and address his needs if he gives you the audience, but for him to give you an audience, you got to be visible. you can't build visibility in a short term, but obviously if you have a strategic investment by a large brand in North America, then automatically you can send your calling card in to saying I have a strategic investment with so and so. So most people are curious to know what's Ford Motor Company got to do with this company, right? So you achieve your end objective of getting in. Two, the strategic investor ensures that because now he's got that investment, your organization needs to have the necessary governance that any tier 1 company globally needs to. Right? So you do two things. You ensure that you don't have now a financial investor technically in your thing who's pushing you, to maximize returns from a monetary angle. You're getting a strategic investor in who says, listen, I'm in it because I'm kind of depending on you to build certain capabilities for me, which are necessary for my business, and that creates a significant lock-in. But as an organization, we get access to a $120 billion enterprises, skills, capabilities, structures, which then ensure our longevity going forward. Right. So that was, if you look, it happened. It's not what we would say. Did we plan for it? No, but we had our views clearly on the fact that we didn't need a financial investor, right? Because we were clear that we were still excited and passionate about what we were doing. We believed in what we wanted to do. And we said, if you're successful, you'd still make money. But money is not the primary reason to want to do the business. And that's a little bit of a strong differentiation, which I say, I wouldn't say that's what we began business from in the beginning. We began because we felt that a lot of us who worked in large corporations felt that they were just not moving at the pace at which we would like to move, right? I see this customer, he's got a problem, we want to solve this problem. You go back to your business and they say, okay, by the way, we've got enough problems on the hand, we really don't want to tackle these. And I think that today when we get employees who are coming in from what we call the younger generation, and we see that same excitement in them because they have grown up in this world which was global. They always watched MTV the day they were born. They had mobile phones all their lives, so they really are not limited. The social media was something that they grew up on and they've used it very well. So if you come to an organization and you see a screen where you got to enter timesheets and you got to do certain things, immediately the reaction comes back from saying, do we really need to do this? If I log into the system, isn't it good enough to say I'm here, right? And even if I logged in from home, I'm working on it, so why manage me, right? And I think that's probably part of what we are learning today, is to saying that this generation has a different perspective on life. They've already seen, they're not, if we treated them the way we treated the generation just before them, we lose them, right? So we probably would look at it and say, as an organization, our responsibility is to make sure that we marry both the individual's requirements with ours. If we gave them that flexibility, we'd probably earn much more productivity than in the previous past. Right? So I'd leave it there and said, I come back to my original question, that when you build an enterprise, right, what do you build it for? When people say, because we started off with saying there's a challenge that the founders, when you create a startup, there are challenges as far as innovation is concerned. I've given you two examples of challenges and said, here's what we solved it. I also put this question of the fiscal dimension to our entire business, and we all know how much that's important as far as governance is concerned. But if any one of you were thinking or contemplating today that I'm not very happy with what I do, or I'm not happy with my enterprise, I'm not happy with myself in terms of I'm not exploiting the potential that I believe I have, right? What would you look at and what would you consider as what should be that single largest driver that should make you take that call that, yes, I need to do something different from tomorrow, and there's nothing to lose if I made that step? Anybody wants to provide a viewpoint? Correct. If you are passionate, if you have belief, that's what you should do. Why do people still hesitate?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. So from which peer?
The peer in the sense of this, so many times it happens that the people around you, your colleagues, your work colleagues, will say, you know what, this is safe. Why do you want to take a shot? There are a lot of instances.
That means they are not passionate about your idea, right? So you apply what he mentioned, saying first you believe in your passions, right? Then obviously that's the wrong group of people that you're doing a tool trial on, right? You're going to somebody who's very happy with his 9-to-5 job. He's obviously going to say, hey, my wife wants to take the risk. You won't get holiday on Monday. So I'm saying that's not an excuse not to do it. It's just that you tried or you post a query to the wrong person. Won't get you the right answer. Right? Anybody else?
Even if you are passionate, in Indian market conditions, they are very balanced. The vibrancy of markets is an important factor when you...
Not necessarily. I mean, let me tell you this. Whatever you start with, your business is never going to be linear, right?
The vibrancy of the market in graphical way last 5 years.
Which, are you saying stock market?
Stock market, the financial market.
Somebody runs it. No, I would say that's something that, again, I mean, just take it from a point of view that don't worry too much about the area that you are in, right? Because fundamentally what we say, if you've got the if there are 3 good people in a room with the right intentions, they can find an answer out of any problem that you put to them. When I say they may not find the answer the first time, right? But if they tried and then they did something and they went wrong, then tried it the second time and they tried it the third time, they'll get out of it, right? That's how the whole world works.
Everybody looks for the fail to be like, fail to say fast.
I'm sorry?
Everybody looks for fail to say. Even if I fail,
There is no risk-free venture, right? There's always a risk. You got to plan for that risk. So when you start out, you'll say, okay, what's the risk that I can take? Actually, there's absolutely no risk. Actually, you have nothing to lose. When your business is midway and you've got 100 crore valuation, then you have a lot to lose when you take risks, right? Because you lose 100 crores. So in the startup phase, what do you have? You have nothing to lose but your inertia. How much are you going to put in? If you've already earned that in the past few years, you can definitely earn it in the next 2 going back to work where you were. So there's no risk. Saying if you are passionate about what you do and you don't ask the questions to the wrong people and you don't worry about whether the market's growing or not, there's no risk. So it's mostly, I think, to add to your point, nobody can do this alone, right? There is no concept of a single founder and so on. It's about the team that you bring together. So we said you need 3 good people. I mean, and they then in turn will bring the next 3 good people and so on. So if you have the right 3 people into a room and saying, if you believe that the President Obama is going to make a right decision on Syria, I don't think anybody can say that it's going to be a right decision. Time will tell you what the decision is right or wrong. But somewhere he's got to take a decision. The same thing that we do in business today, right? You tell 3 people, here's a scenario, you've got to take a call. They evaluate certain variables they have at that point, take a decision, they go on. Sometimes the decisions are right, sometimes the decisions are wrong. There's nothing much you do about them. Any other viewpoint?
Yeah, can I say something? Yeah.
Yes, please.
I've had the fortune or misfortune to have led a trial that did not show impact. In my organization, they celebrate failures, so I was promptly put in charge of the next trial. But the self-doubt that I get often is, have I learned enough from my mistake? And so often, how do you process your failure and what learnings you take from it? Are you taking the right learnings from it? Are you not analyzing it right and taking the wrong learnings from it? That's a question I constantly face.
Yes, I also see this there are 2 groups of people, and that's when you say when you select your first team, and it's got to do with the way we bring up our children and, the environment that they come up in. The factor of confidence has got to be extremely high, right? I'm saying I believe in certain things and I'm going to do it. My value systems are correct. So I'm not afraid of failure. And, let's say like a child goes out to play, he comes back, he wins the game, parents say good, he loses the game, parents says you're not good, right? Then the person doesn't go forward. But I think that builds up and, somewhere we got to come out of that and say success and failure are both going to happen. There is no business that is always successful. And we've gone into businesses, we've lost money. But we learn from it. We obviously blame ourselves or we look at the things, what did I do wrong, right? Where did I not look at the controls that are there in place? Where did I select the wrong people? Where did I not create, an alternative plan B, right? So all those happen in real life. So I don't think we should worry on that. I agree that if you make too many mistakes, then you'd bring the business down, right? And so you got to take a calculated risk that failure is necessary. Failure will be part of, our bucket of, results that we create every year. And that failure should be seen as like, can we force people to learn from those failures? I think again difficult, right? Because the people who took the call have very valid reasons why they did it. They'll also give you all the background as to what was the framework under which they decided. Sometimes that's why I think data is not all about the decision. So I can take the same decision if three people, a group of people are going to take a program, a separate decision if another group of people are going to take a program. So you look for the intrinsic motivation of that team to want to do it. I think a highly motivated team succeeds more often than not. And to answer your question, that part is an unlearning. Like you say, it's the part of the innovation of self that we need to do and therefore build within our children, that we shouldn't really be concerned about failure. Failure is good. Failure is necessary. It's like when you play a game, one person loses, one person wins. You go ahead. That's a very, very good question. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
Can you tell me more about the team? So you said it's the utmost important factor in a startup. So what qualities should this most important qualities which has to be there in the team for a startup to get successful?
So you have to look at people that complement you, right? Let's say you are a very good sales guy. So you obviously don't need the next guy to be also good in sales, right? So you look for somebody who's good in operations, and you look at somebody who's good in financials, and you look at somebody who's good with people. You could look at somebody who will stay in the office and manage the environment versus people who will go out. So, every business model has, 9 or 7, roughly 9 building blocks. So you got to make sure that each of those 9 building blocks is taken care of by the right set of people. So, if you ask me the question, is that I need one of each? Again, practically impossible to get the best in all these areas. Remember, you're a startup. You're not going to get Bill Gates on to be on your team, or Steve Jobs coming out. So what you have to remember is, as the founder, your strengths. Then you realize that these are things you should do, these are things you should not get into, right? And definitely the areas that you don't know, delegate. So find the right guys, give it to them, and then don't watch over them, or really the part of building I've seen any skill is, once you make people realize that, listen, this is your responsibility, you're going to make it work, and your success or failure is going to determine my success or failure, they normally won't let you down. But if you doubt them and you think, I know more than you, then he's hesitant to make that call, right? That's what happens most often.
Yeah, sometimes do you think that, okay, we have identified our strengths, we know our capabilities, but choice of a wrong niche in the market, that makes you, to not to go forward or sort of failure. So maybe, we may be what we are, we know it, but instead of understanding market very well, that is where we have gone wrong. Do you think that happens?
Unfortunately, I don't think too much. So the thing is, the big issue here is, see, actually you could have been right only for a few months. Suppose, let's say that everybody needs a mic tomorrow, and you might know it, but there's somebody competition is going to come up and make mics to meet the market need, right? So that thought of I'm in the right place or not, I'm early in that place or not, I'm a first mover in this place, with technology, with the amount of globalization that there, and with the rapid movement of goods from one place to the other, movement of people from one place to the other, you don't have lead time. You're not really going to be successful with a head start by any order. So what we call as creating the fit between your activities, that is what kind of people that you hire, the way you do the work, the way you drive them. So the softer parts will finally overtake the harder parts. Because if you take telecom today, there are large players who play and there are small players to play. Both are successful, right? Every business. So that's not a worry about, the point you would look at and saying, yes, suppose I was to sell software and I picked the wrong set of software to learn. You'll learn in a quarter or two, right? Because you'll know that you haven't been successful in the first quarter. Even when some people lend you money, they never lend you money for a quarter, they lend you money for 3 years. They know, you might be wiser enough to put together the 3-year or 5-year business plan and then fund it or finance it to the extent that you need. So you won't go wrong on 1 or 2 quarters. You should recognize the mistake, correct, and move forward. Sorry, any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I hope it's been useful.